The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Warwick again, everybody, and we're in exactly the same place where we left off 24 hours ago, aren't we, Nikki?
Yeah, but it's 24 hours for the people, but it's about 24 minutes for us.
24 minutes? More like 24 seconds. All I did was turn the camera around on the spot.
I mean from the last village to this one.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, let's have a walk around this place then. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to be seeing a big river, one that you should really know because everyone in this part of the world seems to know it. It's the River Avon. I'll see a big bridge that crosses it. Welcome to Barford. Barford, Barley Ford. For your Wednesday episode this week, we're deep in the Warwickshire countryside as we take on the village and parish of Barford. This is one of the most historically loaded anywhere in Warwickshire, full of some crappy buildings and some ancient landmarks, which you know by now I'll be all over like a rash. Barford is about 3 miles south of Warwick. As the largest village within a batch of 3 along the A429, it shares its parish council with neighbouring Sherborne and Wasperton, both of which are hitting your screens this week too. In March 2014, the Sunday Times listed the village as one of the top 10 places to live in the Midlands, and after walking around it, I'd say that's a fair reflection. Barford sits close to the River Avon, which flows to its north. Several notable historical figures are connected to the place, including Joseph Arch, the first president of the National Agricultural Labourers Union and a former Liberal MP. One of the 2 pubs in Barford is named after him, and the man himself is buried at St Peter's Church. Barford was used by the author C.P. Snow in his novel The New Men. In it, a British nuclear experimental establishment is based in Barford. The characters try to build a nuclear pile and harvest enough enriched uranium or plutonium to beat a US atomic bomb development. Don't worry, there's nothing dangerously explosive about the real thing, but I hope this episode at least packs a punch when you watch it. Let's see what it's like, people. We start proceedings in Barford with the Glebe Hotel. This was originally a rectory and was built in the 1820s. It was privately owned until 1948 when it became a small country house hotel. It's one of 42 Grade 2 listed buildings in the village. As you can probably tell, at present it isn't taking any guest bookings. The Glebe has been the subject of several planning applications of late, including one for a residential redevelopment. Warwick District Council refused the application due to concerns about the design, its impact on Barford's conservation area, and insufficient public benefits. Nonetheless, the former hotel is set to be converted into apartments after a planning inspector overturned the district planner's decision. It remains to be seen what happens with this building in due course. And here is the church for which the Glebe was the rectory. St Peter's Parish Church dates back to the 14th century, although it was largely rebuilt in 1844 by Richard Charles Hussey, a project that was sponsored by Louisa Ryland. Keep her name in mind for later. It's believed there was a church here long before the 14th century though. In 618 AD, Pope Gregory I sent a Roman missionary called Paulinus to preach Christianity to the Anglo-Saxons of Mercia. Paulinus went on to become the first Archbishop of York. It was probably around that time that the first Christian church, again dedicated to St Peter, was built in Barford. Certainly by the time of Doomsday, there was a thriving church on the present site, as evidenced by the mention of a resident priest. Today, the tower is a good example of many which were built with Warwick sandstone about 600 years ago. It has architectural features similar to those of the Chancel of St Mary's Church in Warwick itself, and the same masons may have been employed. St Peter's has shot marks on the side of the tower believed to have been made in 1642 by parliamentary soldiers heading for the Battle of Edgehill. Do you know, I can't take this one anywhere. I fully understand that, you know, we're on a trip here which covers villages, which is what I do. But Nikki, being a talented cross-stitcher, will always find bits of needlework. And this here is a bit of cross-stitch, isn't it, Nikki?
Yeah.
In the churchyard, close to a line of yew trees, is the grave of Joseph Arch, Barford's most celebrated citizen. He was born in and died in the cottage opposite St Peter's, which we'll catch near the end. After exiting the churchyard, we're now off to the playing field. Barford Playing Field has a storied past which goes back to 1898. That's when the first attempt to purchase land for recreational use was unsuccessful following letters of objection by influential villagers. The man attempting the purchase was Lord Warwick. However, in 1936, to celebrate the coronation of King George V, the land you see before you was turned into a playing field. The Duke of Kent would officially open it as such in 1938, but it's been a bit turbulent since then. During World War II, a significant amount of Barford's permanent pasture, which included the playing field, was ploughed up. This was done in order to produce food on the home front. The field would return to its previous use following victory in 1945. There have been several more modern challenges too, including the closure of the children's play area, the tennis courts and the outdoor gym due to COVID-19. The local football team, Barford United, no longer play here either. They've relocated to Racing Club Warwick. If you follow the path alongside the playing field, you'll pass Barford allotments. We've not seen any of these for a while. Are you still with us, allotment fans? Well, there's one thing for sure, the fans get their fill here in Barford when it comes to the allotments, because there are two patches. There's the one I've just shown you, and also on this side, as you go a bit further down, there's loads of them. Loads of allotments have got apple trees in them as well. It's almost like a little orchard, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got apple trees and stuff, and then there's like pumpkins you can see, and peas that are being grown, and cabbages and all sorts of things. And I'm just like, I'd love an allotment.
It would be quite awesome to own a patch of land, I suppose, but we don't. But lots of people here in Barford seemingly do, and good for them. Now we come to the newest building in the village. In fact, this is so new, it wasn't even on my maps when I planned this route. After 8 years of design, fundraising and hard work, the doors of Barford Youth and Community Centre opened on Saturday the 21st of September 2024. The new building, featuring a main hall, a professional kitchen and a smaller meeting room, sits on the site of an old dilapidated scout hut. It'll serve not just as the Scout Group's new HQ, but also as a go-to hub for the wider community. The project cost £1 million. Through Sandy Way we go now towards the old main road through the village from north to south. Next up is the Granville Arms, a Grade 2 listed Georgian pub. This was named after the Reverend Edward Granville, vicar of nearby Westham from 1900 onwards. At that time, the boundary of the two parishes lay at Westham Lane, meaning this part of modern-day Barford was actually in Westham back then. Now the boundary has moved. It was extended to take in the expanse of council housing south of the village in the late 1940s. We already knew at this point that Barford looked a bit different before then, and here's how. So when we were in the church, there was a map on the wall which showed the various sort of ownership rights of parts of Barford. What was it, 1700s?
1700s.
Something like that. All of this area to the south was, generally speaking, fields. All of this kind of didn't exist. But the main bit of Barford, the main street, which we're heading back towards now, that existed. That's definitely the oldest bit. And there are some very interesting and grand properties up there. One of them is coming up on the right-hand side. Can you see that wall over there on the right in the trees? Let's go and see what's behind that. This long brick wall belongs to Barford House. It's a fine Grade 2 listed Regency property to which Evelyn Waugh was a frequent visitor in the 1920s and 30s. Barford is lucky to still have this property. English country houses began their decline during the agricultural depression of the 1870s, which in turn was accelerated by World War I. The staff required to maintain them left to fight or to work in munition factories. During the 1950s and 60s, thousands of country houses were demolished. Barford lost two others during those decades, Barford Hill House and the Red House, both of which were pulled down. Barford House, though, is still a private family home and stands to remind us of grander times and a different way of life. Barford House has had several notable residents in its time. These include Brooke Robinson, a former MP for Dudley, in 1886. Now we're coming into Barford's historic core again, and next up we have another pub. This time it's named after the village's most celebrated son. This is the Joseph Arch. It was formerly called the Red Lion, but changed its name in April 1960. It was originally a coaching inn and had two loose boxes and a stall so that horses pulling the Leamington to Stratford coach could be changed. This horse-drawn service continued until 1907. It's named after the founder of the Agricultural Workers' Union, local man Joseph Arch. He was a trade unionist and politician who played a key role in unionising agricultural workers and championing their welfare. Following their enfranchisement, he became a Member of Parliament. Joseph Arch started work at the age of 9 as a crow scarer, working 12 hours a day. Afterwards, he became a ploughboy, progressing to mastery of all-round skills, which enabled him to move around the Midlands and South Wales, earning a reasonable wage. At the same time, he observed the terrible conditions in which the majority of agricultural labourers lived. As many were uneducated, underfed and underpaid, their cottages were often unfit for human habitation. In many a country village, the condition of the labourer and his family was similar to that of the cattle that they tended. Arch became a primitive Methodist preacher and later a supporter of liberalism. As a well-respected and experienced agricultural worker, his destitute peers eventually turned to him for help in their fight for a living wage. Called to address an initial workers' meeting held in the Stag's Head pub in Wellesbourne in 1872, Arch had been expecting an attendance of fewer than 30 people. Instead, he found over 2,000 agricultural labourers from all of the surrounding areas had arrived to hear him speak. So instead, the meeting was held outside under a large chestnut tree, with the labourers holding flickering lanterns on bean poles to illuminate the proceedings. After agitation up and down the country, the National Agricultural Labourers' Union was established in May of that same year, with Arch as its president. Joining the union, many withdrew their labour, and when farmers and landowners found their reprisals were no longer effective, there was a temporary rise in their wages. Later, lockouts of union members by farm owners became widespread, and the union finally collapsed in 1896. Although it was replaced a decade later by the National Union of Agricultural and Allied Workers in 1906. Many agricultural labourers would display Arch's portrait in their homes, and he became the subject of rallying songs, such as "Joe Arch, he raised his voice, 'twas for the working men, then let us all rejoice and say, we'll all be union men." This didn't last though. In the 1885 general election, Arch was returned as the Liberal Party MP for North West Norfolk, becoming the first agricultural labourer to enter the House of Commons. As an MP, he seldom spoke, and his former supporters came to perceive him as pompous and out of touch. The fact remains though, Joseph Arch was a key figure in the life and work of rural England. Oh, and as for the tree under which his first meeting was held, it died in 1948, but the spot was marked by a commemorative stone and renamed Chestnut Square. In 1952, the National Union of Agricultural Workers erected a bus shelter there and set up a commemorative plaque, which still remains today. Okay, so we've reached the River Avon, which Nikki got to before me, and you were just enjoying the sound of the water, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just the vehicles passing by, but yeah, I like to sit where I can hear water.
Well, those vehicles are passing by because they're crossing Barford Bridge, and I'll show you that by turning the camera around. You can just see the waters of the Avon and the bridge, and isn't that just beautiful? So let's talk a bit about this and a bit about the bridge, shall we? So here we are at Barford Bridge, which has crossed the River Avon at this point since 1782. Before this fabulous structure was created, crossing the Avon here was done by way of a ford, hence the village's name. Barford means Barley Ford. In 1339, records refer to the ford here, but the river crossing point has been important since Anglo-Saxon times. The first record of a bridge comes in 1484, and this early structure was described by John Leyland in 1540 as a great stone bridge consisting of 8 fair arches. The present bridge is made of sandstone and was constructed by the architect Henry Couchman, the county bridge master. Between the two, there was an intervening bridge. It was Gothic with 7 arches and a small tower at its northern end. Although you can still use this bridge, most traffic bypasses the village now via the modern A429, carried by a newer bridge slightly to the west. Barford Bridge carries the old route of the A429, and it's a former turnpike road. As such, it used to have toll gates every 5 miles along its length. And here's a word on the Avon. Barford is the first parish in which we've seen this mighty English river, but it won't be the last. It begins in Northamptonshire and flows generally southwestwards. The Avon is the easternmost tributary of the River Severn. This stretch through this part of Warwickshire is sometimes known as Shakespeare's Avon, a reference to the man himself who was born in Stratford a few miles away. Barford once had a ferry further upstream that connected the two sides together, as well as a wharf or two. With no way over the Avon on foot other than Barford Bridge, we have to turn around. Let's make our way to the last street. This is Barford's Memorial Hall, which was donated to the village between 1929 and 1931 by Louisa Smith Ryland in memory of her husband, Charles. It was previously known as the Barford Playing Field and Village Hall, and also went by the working name, the Barford Bear. The building consists of a main hall with seating available for about 90 people. It also has a proscenium arch stage, curtained off usually, but available to all. Catering wise, it's got a kitchen with a fridge, cupboards, a double sink and a stock of cutlery and crockery. All mod cons here. The Memorial Hall is a registered charity trust and the members of its committee of management are the trustees. Part of the building also doubles as Barford's village shop, and Nikki tootled off inside at this point to check out what was on offer. In the meantime, I made use of the parish notice board outside. You can all tick Barford off the Warwick list. 3 down, 29 to go. A little further up the street is Barford School. Education in the village dates back to 1677 when the rector and former headmaster of Warwick School, Thomas Dugard, made a bequest of £5 a year, £4 of which paid the salary of a teacher for 14 poor children. The £5 was to teach 2 poor girls. To this small endowment, various bequests were added, notably from generations of the Mills family. In 1851, the present school was erected by the Church of England. As a national school, it consisted of 2 large rooms, with boys and girls being segregated. In 1948, financial responsibility was taken over by Warwickshire County Council. However, the church maintained its links. The building was extended in 1960, and until the mid-1970s, this was a thriving junior and infant school. Numbers slowly decreased though, and in 1993 it was proposed that Barford School should close. This was met with fierce opposition from the community, and the decision was overturned. It's a good thing it was. Barford now ranks among the best 25 schools in England. Between here and the end, there's an absolute plethora of fine houses, buildings which make you wonder how ace it would be to live in Barford. Among them is the small white cottage that Joseph Arch was born in. Enjoy. Okay, we are all the way around Barford. That's actually taken me a long time, longer than I thought it would take actually, an hour and 16 minutes effectively to get all the way around this village. But there's a lot here, there's a lot to see, a lot to take in, a lot of beautiful buildings. I hope it's the same in the next one, but I don't think it will be, because the next one is basically just one street and there's not a lot to see in it, to be honest. But we'll see when we get there. It might surprise me. Now, just before we go to that village, there's something else I need to cover here in Barford. I need to go down Westham Lane to show you one final property. This is Westham Lane, which was cut into two pieces by the new A429 bypass when it was constructed. Theoretically, this is a private road, but I saw no harm in driving up it because the house I was interested in here is gated and private anyway. Right at the end of the road is Westham House. It was originally a 16th century farmhouse, but it was rebuilt in the 18th century as a gentleman's hunting lodge. Today it's been converted into apartments, but the main reason I was interested in it is all down to what it was in World War II. In 1940, Seaford Ladies College was evacuated from a bombed area of Sussex and moved to Westham House. Both staff and pupils integrated very well with every aspect of Barford village life. One of the staff, Elsie Winnie, became guide captain to the Barford troop. And that's that, folks. Barford is complete and we can move on to number 4. Come back tomorrow and see what I've got in store for you next. It's a very different place to this. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.